And we are recording. Thank you, and welcome to this week's VHS meeting. Today is March 1st, and we have some things to talk about today. So buckle up. Get ready for a session that's not going to be 5 minutes. So we'll start on the agenda that we always go through. As always, this meeting is recorded and we adhere to our code of conduct. So please be excellent to each other. We have no new attendees, so we do not have to worry about that today. And if any come in, well, then they missed the segment, didn't they? Recent developments. First thing we talk about is, have there been any new features that have come out in the past week? Anything that has been interesting that has happened? Anyone?
I found a bug.
You found a bug?
Yeah.
What did you find?
With the current main branch, we can't generate HAR files, which is kind of one of the things that we've said we could do. So that's a problem. Brad and I ran into that in our experiments that we were running last week. So that's something we need to fix before we release, I would say.
Didn't we used to be able to generate HAR files?
We can, and I know exactly which PR added the ability to not generate HAR files.
Okay. Good.
Because we rolled it back and used the old version.
Okay, very good then. Okay.
I don't think we have any new features, but we have a new bug.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a new feature. I'll put that in the notes. Bug cannot generate HAR files. Zach owns that. We know which PR added this bug. So yay. Okay. Any other features or bugs that we need to talk about? Okay, cool. So that brings us on to the project board. The project board itself hasn't changed in the past couple of weeks, so I'm not going to go over to the board. We're not going to bother sharing it. There are two big things that we need to talk about. First is cutting a release. We need to talk about the process of what we want to do, and the release notes process that I started going through has become a bit more complicated. I've been comparing it to other release note processes in other projects. And, well, long story short, the primary way of generating release notes based on what we've got committed into GitHub repo should be to pull a list of all of the PRs that have been merged between point A and point B in time. Since we don't have a point A right now, it is everything before whenever we decide we're going to cut the release. What goes along with that is, once you pull all the PRs, is understanding what the contents of all of those PRs are. So traditionally, every PR should include some form of release note. In larger repos, this gets handled with tags of various kinds because it depends on what the PR is. If it's a docs change, obviously we don't, like, the docs are self-documenting. You don't put in a release note that says, I have updated the following. You just put, we updated docs. But for features, code changes, anything that is potentially user-facing, everything needs some form of release note. And this takes us back to the discussion we were having a while back about what sort of tags do we want to include in the issues and PRs within the repo at large? And identifying things as feature, as bug, being able to include a PR that says added bug fix for bug that was introduced in the following PR is an important release note. Added mechanism for plugins is an important release note. But we don't have to go too into detail. That's within the PR or that's within the issue. We don't have to say we use the following Go module type in the following with the following behavior. We don't have to say that. So I was thinking back to last time I collected release notes and had to pester a whole lot of different development teams. And a lot of that just involved getting the people who are writing the various features, writing the PRs, writing the commits to put one-liners along with their commit to be more descriptive. And some of them are easily descriptive from the PR header. If you put a good title and a good subject, then it should be pretty easy. If your PR is bug fix for following, that's great. Then we're done. But the potential to add a tag that says something like needs release note, I think is something that when we go back through, ideally it should be done before we're getting ready to cut a release and not say, oh, well, I've pulled up, in our case right now, it's like 25 PRs or something like that. That's easy enough to go through and say, I understand this, I don't understand this, for whoever does the release notes, which at this point is probably me. But being able to do it as we go along as well, to say, when you do a commit, let's take a moment of introspection to step back and say, does this need a release note, or is it self-explanatory to someone who did not write this particular commit? And I'm rambling. So I'm going to open it up to you folks for conversation. What are your thoughts on how we want to handle that at the PR and commit level? And what do we think about tags? What do we think about doing it all along? What do we think about doing it at the end and just making it my problem? Everyone's like, yay, make it Noah's problem. Anybody? What do you got to say?
I think all the above work. I know previously I've done conventional commits, and that's where it's a little bit more curated commit message to kind of help give context into what the change is. So whether it be feature, fix, docs, chore, you name it. I know there's tools out there that can generate a change log or release notes based on that. So that might be an option. I know it's a bit heavy for, well, a bit more of a behavioral change for people to get commits a bit more tailored for that, but it's definitely an option to try to ease things up. We can go through as part of the PRs and add a label there to kind of denote like, hey, we should reference this in the release notes. I think that works as well. Yeah, and it depends too, like, do we want to just have a sweeping change of here's all the commits or important commits that have happened, or here's just the more noteworthy features?
So for the first commit that we're putting in, or for the first release that we're cutting, honestly, we could probably just put first release. I mean, right. We don't have to go overboard.
Yep.
But having the processes in place to say, first release, here's the following features, here's, keeping it fairly simple. Features, fixes, docs, like something to that effect. I think would be a good way to do it. We don't have to go crazy and go overboard. I know if you look at something like the Kubernetes releases, the release notes for an actual release, we're at whatever it is, 1.20, 1.21, I think 1.20 right now. If you look at 1.20.0, those release notes are going to be extensive. It's going to be pages and pages and pages of stuff. Whereas 1.20.1 will have, here's some things we corrected, some bug fixes. And, you know, when they get to 1.20.5, it'll be made a CVE fix, done. Like it'll be very simple. And I think we should probably write something a little more extensive for this first release, while we could do just first release, we're done, saying what we've done, what we've accomplished up till now. And part of that is because of work that was done before this entire project was pushed into GitHub. And I think we want to have some understanding of what did it bring along, what is sort of the legacy baggage, and what can we identify as features, not just from the PRs, but this one release in particular, we need a little bit more oomph into the release notes of what we've brought along that isn't covered in, you know, PRs 1 through 29 or whatever we have up there so far. What do you think? Is it worthwhile to do some writing in that direction?
I think for this one, it's good to just, here's our initial goal with the 1.0 release or 0.1 release. Here's where we're at. Just recap on the features that it allows. I think that works for this initial one.
Okay.
Going forward, we can kind of figure out, because going forward, if we start having releases more regularly with this, it should be a bit more constrained in terms of here's 5, 10, 15, 20 PRs. It should be much easier to deal with.
Okay. I like that idea. I think it covers all of the ground that we want to get out there of what has been done and what has been done before without bogging it down in minutia right now. Just what are the major features currently? Any other comments on that? Anybody? Okay. So once we have that defined, what are the major features, and we can put together an, I was going to say an offhand session, but I think it would probably be best to do it in the public Slack so that we A, have a record of it, and B, make sure that we've got enough eyes that people can come back and say, oh, you forgot this other thing that it does that you may have just absorbed and internalized. But this is actually a feature. So let's take that to the public Slack. And we can do it there. The next thing that comes along with that is, in terms of cutting a release, what are the release artifacts that we want to cut? On a separate back channel conversation, somebody mentioned that we might have binaries, we might have other artifact types, which got me in this mindset. And I think it's worthwhile to just enumerate what all the artifacts will be, perhaps also doing that in the Slack channel and as well as in the note-taking document. I know that we've got an image.
Yeah, what I'm expecting will release, and this is part of what we figured out, is going through this whole experiment flow with VHS. We'll have a container that we release, so it can be used as a sidecar for whatever application you're running. If you're running in a containerized environment, We'll also release a Debian package. So that way, if you're not running in a containerized environment, you can install it there. Or if you want to include it as part of your container, you can do that as well. So we'll at least have those two. I think I don't know if there's much value in releasing just the binary because of the dependency on libpcap. So I don't think there's much value in doing just a straight up binary. I think it makes sense to be packaged.
Okay. And I mean, it's not like the code isn't there if somebody wants to compile binary.
Right, and rebuild it, do whatever they need to do.
Okay, is that it? That's pretty much the sum total of artifacts. We've got a container image and a .deb. And I guess the release notes and documentation that goes along with each release.
That at least covers our use cases for it. If there's others from the community that we need to cover, whether it be an RPM or whatever, we can work on that as we go forward.
Okay. Okay. I think that gets us there then. I'm putting these in the meeting minutes. What else does the community want? Which brings us to, it's a good segue into the next thing on the agenda, which is under the idea of road mapping, that we're still missing a lot of understanding and we're missing a lot of direction with respect to what the community wants out of this project. This project was put together as a good idea that we said, let's bring it out, let's make it open source, let's make it community owned. But we're still missing a lot of input from the community on the direction that this project as an open source project needs to go. So the question of what else does the community want is very germane here. It is incredibly relevant, and I think in general, we're missing a lot of that understanding. So the idea would be that over the month of March, we need to do some significant community outreach for, or rather to, the people who are interested in this project and the people who are interested either as end users or as developers or as consumers in some other fashion. So we would like to put together a set of surveys and or interviews to talk to the folks who have shown interest in this project so we can get a better understanding beyond, we know that its current incarnation of recording traffic and replaying it back is received with positive feedback, but the understanding of how that would be put to use by the end users and the understanding of what people want to see out of a project like this. We really need to be doing a lot more directional gathering for this project. So in addition to cutting a release, the focus post-release for this project right now is to be gathering information from the community, figure out what everybody wants, what we need, how we want to gather that, how we want to conduct those surveys. That's entirely up to the community at large, which is currently us, the folks on this call. We should probably be discussing it in public, either on this call or directly in GitHub issues. I think tracking it in GitHub issues is a better way to hold it for posterity, such that anyone who comes to look at the project doesn't have to come back and watch these videos. They can see it at a glance within the list of everything that is stored in GitHub. That is the identity of the project. So trying to build out surveys and trying to build out interview purposes. No, that's not right. Outlines. That's the word I was looking for. Trying to build out interview outlines. I think we should do inside GitHub issues, as well as taking any other ideas that we have out there and saying, yeah, I was thinking we'd take the project in direction X or direction Y. We should also be getting all those ideas into GitHub issues so that they can get community reviewed. Thumbs up, thumbs down at the very least, so that people can help us understand if our ideas are on the right track for their needs. Anybody have any feedback on that and or want to push it in a different direction?
I'm excited. I think for me, I would want to first try to contact anybody who has been engaged somehow, and see if we can, get them to talk to us about why they were interested, what they were looking for, and then we can kind of use that information to start, I guess, asking more targeted questions in a survey, would be my thought. But maybe a survey is a good way to get people to sign up for an interview and say, answer these few questions. Would you talk to us? Schedule here. I don't know.
I like that idea that it could go in both directions. I think we've had a handful of people that have shown significant interest in getting them in the first interviews, which we can then build into surveys with a more broader sense, that we can add a question of, would you like to have a follow-up interview? I think that's a good direction because we can get the first couple people outside of this immediate group that is here every week.
Yeah, I think that will help us at least form some more concrete hypotheses that can let us, create a future script that is a bit more targeted at the goal of, should we pursue this or whatever. But at first, we just kind of need to do what are the categories of reasons why people came here? At least that's my opinion. I don't know.
I like it. Anybody else? Other thoughts? That's a no. Okay. So that gives us a good tactic for, we'll reach out to the couple of people who've shown significant interest, have some interviews with them on what the survey should contain, and then these surveys will also include a question of, would you please, please, please give a follow-up interview with us, please? We'll be your best friend. That leads into, if we're doing that and we are putting our ideas into GitHub for all of the, whether they're written down or not, getting all of our ideas into issues so that we can come back to them later. That pushes out the renaming effort, because the idea of what this project might take as a trajectory could change based on those surveys and based on those interviews. And we wouldn't want to have, let's say we did the name collection and voting today, and everyone voted on open replay, but it turns out that that's not the thing that everybody actually cares about, is the replay function. Well, then we've named the project poorly, and if we've already renamed it, we don't want to say, oh, we were wrong, let's go back and rename it again. Let's get it right the first time. So that's going to get pushed out till at least April at this point. That's my thought. I think at least a month of gathering this information, surveys and interviews seems like a good time frame. Does everybody else agree with that? A month sounds good. Okay. So we will use March for this information gathering. And then in April, once we have a better idea of what's going on, we can reapproach the renaming process, hopefully with more involved people. Which brings us to, on the agenda, open discussion and Q&A. Anybody got anything that they want to bring up? Because we've gone through a lot today. See lots of shaking heads. Okay. That's it then. I guess I'm going to stop recording. And thank you all for coming to this particular meeting, which has been a hard introspection and directional, well, not directional change, but we've all stopped to read that road sign and figure out where we're going next. So thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop recording now.